Hello and welcome. My name's Dan Harries. I'm the founder and CEO of Neurodiversity Business. We're a charity who have been set up to help transform the life chances of neurodivergent individuals globally and the employment chances through corporations, businesses, understanding neurodiversity and better supporting on the topic. I'm really pleased today to welcome Paul Stevenson. Paul's a very well-known Tourette syndrome activist, and I wanted to invite Paul onto our series of video podcasts because I think it's fair to say that Tourette's is a topic which isn't as well publicised or supported or understood as other elements of neurodiversity. And indeed, some organisations don't even consider Tourette's as part of neurodiversity. So Paul and I share that kind of same aim that we need to dispel some myths. And Paul, I'd love you to kind of introduce yourself and the amazing work that you've been doing, please.
Hi, first of all, thanks, Dan, for inviting me. My name's Paul Stevenson. I am 59 years old and wasn't diagnosed with Tourette syndrome until I was 46. I now understand that I have had the condition all my life because it is a lifelong condition, but due to PTSD occurring, the Tourette's exploded from me in, like I said, age 46, and it was a bit of a baptism of fire, not understanding what was going on. Cut a long story short, and to turn a negative into a positive, it held me back a lot. But then I thought, I'm in a unique position here as an adult, living with a condition that a lot of young people live with. I may not be able to articulate to the parents or to employers. So I took it upon myself to put myself out there as a volunteer to support and assist people who was struggling with Tourette's. I also got on a bit of a crusade to dispel a lot of myths about Tourette syndrome, and that's what I've been doing since my diagnosis. I think we're talking about 14 years ago now. So,
Got it. Well, look, I've been following you for a while, and I've been keen to get you onto the series of podcasts because, as I said earlier, it's not terribly well understood, and there are some very old-fashioned stereotypical views of Tourette's. So what I'd love for you to do maybe is just let our kind of viewership just tell us, what is Tourette's from your perspective?
Well, it's not rocket science for a start. It's far more complex than that. It's a complex neurological condition that's genetic, and it's passed on through families, obviously, with being genetic. The criteria for diagnosis is 1 or 2 tics, both vocal and motor, over a period of a year. And that's, basically much as far as diagnosis is concerned. So it seems pretty simple. But what isn't known about Tourette syndrome and its complexities is that people think one of the stigma is that it's a swearing condition, but I believe the biggest stigma out there is that it's a rare condition.
Right.
And it's not. So we've got, at the moment, off old statistics, is 1 in 100. So we're nearly on par with it occurring like autism, childhood epilepsy. So we're not in a rare condition. There's a lot of people living with this condition, either diagnosed or undiagnosed.
Gosh, I think we should pause there briefly, Paul, because actually 1 in 100 is huge, and that is far away from public perception, isn't it? I think public perception is that it's very, very rare, and you don't see these people out in the street or in the workplace. And is that prevalence changing with better diagnosis and recognition? Have you got any views on that?
Well, I've been working on a project with Nottingham University and Tourette's Action and a few other associations around, and it's to get, there's no nice guidelines for Tourette syndrome.
Okay.
Right. There's very, very little places across the UK, other than maybe Great Ormond Street and a few other places where you can get a diagnosis. And so we find that a lot of parents, a lot of adults are struggling. It's a difficult thing to come to terms with yourself, but getting a diagnosis is the beginning of your journey. You find out what's wrong with you. Now, I don't believe I'm broken. I don't need fixing, but obviously this condition has an effect on my life. It's affected by people's perceptions. So within like milliseconds, someone's made their mind up that you're either, there's something wrong with you, you're crazy, like in my case, I've got full-blown Tourette's with coprolalia. So I'm there's maybe about 10% of people living with a condition that have coprolalia. So, but everybody thinks everybody with Tourette's has coprolalia.
And do you mind, could we just pause, Paul, because I know a lot of our audience won't necessarily understand that term. So what does that mean technically?
Coprolalia is curse words, swear words,
I see.
saying things that are inappropriate. It's a Greek word, and its translation's rather comedic, but if anybody wants to look it up themselves, they can do, but I'm not going to say it. But yeah, for those that live with it, us that live with it, it's just another tic, right? So, but sadly, people are judged by, if they don't have coprolalia, people don't think they have Tourette syndrome. So in my case, from being born in the 60s, I've had Tourette's all my life, but my tics were that small and insignificant. Even though they had an impact on me, I didn't know that I had Tourette syndrome.
Okay, understood. So let's touch on that kind of potentially slightly kind of contentious topic around Tourette's within the family and the spectrum of neurodiversity, because a lot of organisations don't include it, don't consider it, aren't aware of it. So what's your viewpoint on those that say, you know, neurodiversity is a small number of set conditions and Tourette's outside of that? What would your viewpoint be?
Well, my viewpoint is, when I got my diagnosis, I also got a diagnosis of ADHD, OCD, and sensory processing issues, which is a spectrum issue. And so it's not usually a standalone condition. You know, it comes with a package for a lot of people. Now, there is a famous quote, I can't remember the gentleman saying it, but it's about autism. You've met one person with autism, you've met one person. And the same goes with Tourette syndrome. So the difficult thing is when people look at you, if they pigeonhole you as far as the community is concerned, what the community think about Tourette syndrome, what Tourette syndrome is, then we're totally different. Because I mean, my ADHD affects my Tourette's. My sensory processing has a massive trigger for my Tourette syndrome. And it's like, I'll give you an illustration, Dan. It's like if some pop star brings out a disc, a record, a new tune, just say Beyonce for instance, within hours of it being released, someone's put a dance mix on it. Someone's put a drum and bass mix on it. Primarily, it's the same track, but it is different. And I try and illustrate that to people with Tourette syndrome, that, you know, you might see me ticking loud, you might hear me saying this, but the next person with Tourette syndrome is going to be, you know, individually completely different, like fingerprint different. So.
Got it. Understood. And Paul, just tell me about how can we best support people with Tourette's in society? So, you know, what are the things that the general public do maybe wrong or ill-considered that maybe you don't like? How, because, you know, I was on this journey with, you know, my little boy, Joshy, who's autistic and non-verbal. And there were things that I put out there in the public to say, look, this is how we would like community to treat autistic people. So I'd love to understand from you, what are the things that people do wrong and you just wish people would do better?
I'm pretty forgiving as to bad experiences that I've had. And the reason why is that we've all got unconscious bias. So we make opinions on what we see, what we observe. And like I said, these are done in milliseconds. So in the past, I've had people shelter the children from me, accuse me of being drunk or on drugs. They found me that different that they filmed me, and I've been laughed at, I've been mocked at, I've been physically attacked.
Wow.
Now, which, you know, it has an horrific effect on me. My social anxiety is extremely high going out. So one thing that I thought, and you basically came across this when you just spoke about your son, is that you put it out there. Right now, the world doesn't owe us anything. It doesn't, you know. So I think with me having Tourette syndrome and these co-occurring conditions, it's my responsibility to educate people. So, for instance, I made a video pretty early on. It's on YouTube under the title of Three Men with Tourette's Go on Holiday. Well, it got translated into Italian, and like went 10 million hits in Italy. And I kept having very negative, comedic, like poking fun sort of messages, emails back. So I kept correcting them. I didn't get angry. And when I saw the video, I realised that the way that it had been done had been translated by one person's voice for all the characters.
Okay.
And that's what made it that extra bit. So rather than reacting to their initial reaction, I looked into it. Why did they find it funny? Why are people looking at me this way? And then I emailed people back, I messaged people back on Insta, and I said, listen, I understand why you find this humorous, but the reality of this condition is. So it was changing their perceptions. And we don't ask much with Tourette syndrome, right? We just want equal footing with people with other disabilities, the rights, and we don't have that. For instance, I've got a friend called Mary who's a wheelchair user, and access to work's fine, but unfortunately her chair made some noises when she came through the door, and she'd say, yeah, people look round at me and go, hi Mary. Now I've had that thing where I walk into a room and people look round and go, did you hear what he said? Oh my goodness me, do you see what he did? And right away I'm feeling the pressure from that. And in the future, what I'd like, Dan, is just for people to look round and maybe go, hi Mary, hi Paul, and just accept that the tics are the tics. There's no intention, there's no malice. Like in the classroom or the workplace, what is the problem with this person who tics? Well, they disturb. Well, what's the disturbance? Well, when they tic, it disturbs people. So I said, well, listen, got a cup here. I put that down, it makes a noise. I drink from it. I gulp. I move my chair, that judders. Are there disturbances? And they said, well, no, not really. And I went, they occur all the time in the workspace, in the classroom. But the reason is, the source. You understand the source of that noise. So if we get to a stage where people know the source and understand that there's no malice, there's no intent to disrupt, it's just a tic, and it's part of a condition called Tourette syndrome, I think we'll have got a long way to making, getting acceptance from other people. Hey.
Right. And that's all you're asking for, really, isn't it, Paul? It's kind of that awareness leading to acceptance, because aside from those tics, you are the same person as John and Bob and Sue sitting next to you in the office. Tourette's has no association with intelligence, productivity, social interactions, right? It's, you're the same person.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and as far as being ND's concerned, we've got the same spiky profile where we excel at certain things. Now, when I got my diagnosis, like I said, I found out what was wrong with me, and I was fighting those challenges all the time. But when I started working for Genius Within, I got a positive assessment. Now, this is the best thing, is I found out what was right with me.
Okay.
But not things that I didn't already knew exist, but didn't realise that this is, I can't say, what are the positives in having Tourette syndrome? I mean, it's a terrible condition. I have friends who are wheelchair bound. It's not an easy life, but getting to know my spiky profile and knowing that I'm a visual thinker, that I have a special thing where I can remember codes and different things, I were able then to work with those strengths. And I think one thing I try and do with younger people is to encourage them to look at that. And I say embrace it. And by embrace it, I don't mean love it, because it's not pleasant to live with. But I mean just take everything in, understand it. We know our challenges, but what things do we excel at? What things drives us forward? Let's concentrate on them, or expand them, if you know what I mean. I don't know if I've explained that very well, but
no, I think we got you. And there's been a pleasing upsurge of kind of awareness and on Tourette's, I think, in the last maybe 6 months. Just tell us about a few of the kind of famous people that have come out and talked about this topic, and you know what role models they're setting for particularly the younger generation, because that's what we're here for, isn't it, Paul? It's to make the lives easier for those coming after us.
I think I had this thing when I found out the stats were 1 in 100. I remember being in a crowd of people at the disability marches in 2010 and seeing the thousands and thousands of people with different conditions, different challenges. And it made me think, you know, if everybody who had Tourette syndrome here put their hand up, you know, I thought there'd be a lot of people did that. Talking to schools, how many pupils do you have in your school? Well, we have over 1,000 pupils. And I said, you know, you say you've never met somebody with Tourette syndrome. There's probably children, young people with Tourette syndrome. Now, one thing is finding a champion. You know, there's a great guy called John Davidson MBE now, actually, and he was the first person to make the documentaries with QED. And he's helped so many different people, not done anything big or explosive to make any awareness, but we'd be saying, just wish a celebrity or somebody successful would step forward and say, I've got Tourette syndrome. So rush into the future, come back into the future, not into the future, to the present. We've got Billie Eilish, who came out, who a lot of young people admire and think, see how brave she is by talking about it. And recently, Lewis Capaldi. And I just think it's good. You know, I would love if some executive director of a company who had Tourette syndrome would step forward and say, listen, you know, I've lived with Tourette syndrome, and what it does, it doesn't only help spread awareness, but it makes people aspire that, you know, they've done that with Tourette syndrome, I can do that with Tourette syndrome. And I think that's, you know, that's the way forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know there's others. There's Seth Rogen, isn't there? Tim Howard. I think, you know, Dan Aykroyd is very famous on this. Scarlett from Gogglebox as well. Yeah, and you're right. I think that's the next step, isn't it? If we can kind of encourage that acceptance and awareness across the corporate world, it would be lovely if someone watching this today was actually able to kind of help you in that kind of awareness message. So, Paul, I've really enjoyed that. I think, you know, this is long overdue conversation, and it's a message that we need to amplify, particularly in the corporate world. So, are there resources that we can point people to if they want to learn more? Yes,
this is the thing. There's lots of support out there. So we've got maybe 4 or 5 different national charities. Just to mention a few: Tourette's Action, Tourette's Scotland, Tourette's Hull. There's a fantastic support group network in Manchester, Manchester Tourette Support Group, Northern Ireland. So they're there to Google. And one thing, this is the thing, Dan, when you're diagnosed, sadly, you feel more isolated. So I was told, wow, this is the worst case of Tourette syndrome that I've ever seen. Now, I've met other people who are like struggling far worse than I am. Second one they said is, this is a very rare condition. And the third one they said is, there's the door, enjoy your life. Now, what I would like to see happening now with consultants is, right, you've got Tourette syndrome. Let me tell you now that this is not a rare condition, and this is not the worst condition I've seen. I appreciate your challenges that you have, but what I can recommend to you is all these telephone numbers, and is to get a good support group network around you, of family, friends, employees, other you know, people that you work with, and direct network people towards these societies, because they've got lots of strategies. People who, like myself, I've got life hacks, life skills of where I've been able to counteract certain tics, how tics have helped me, and I think that's the way forward as far as that's concerned.
Got it. Paul, as I said, really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you for being so transparent and open, and I know others in the community really appreciate that as well, you know, you being a strong advocate and an ambassador. So thank you, Paul. Have a lovely rest of the day. And to our membership, thank you for spending the time in listening on this important topic. Please do follow up on any of those resources that Paul mentioned. you know, reach out to Paul directly if you like, or reach out to NIB and we'll put you in touch with Paul and others in the area. And appreciate your time. Take good care.
Thanks, Dan. Thanks, everybody.